Oakland's planes there. 9 aircraft, 4 single engine, 3 multi-engine, 2 jet planes. And my favorite, the Crouches, and Paul Crouch actually recently died. The Crouches formed Trinity Broadcasting Network, TBN, which is a 501c3 company, so it doesn't pay any taxes. Its assets are in the neighborhood of $800 or $900 million. That's for about 2010. In 2010, they also took in $92 million in donations and $175 million in other tax-free revenue. And actually, the Bakers, when we first met, helped them found this. And this is a station that airs pretty much every televangelist you've ever seen. Pat Robertson's 700 Club, Eddie Long, Joel Osteen, John Hagee, Joyce Mayer, Creflo Dollar, T.D. Jakes, Benny Hinn, all of them, Billy Graham, all of them on this network. And there was a lawsuit filed in 2011 that gave some details. They have 13 mansions that are considered parsonages, including one that's a $100,000 mobile home for Mrs. Crouch's dogs. And they're listed as church parsonages. And here's a really insidious aspect. The Crouch's spokesman have acknowledged that TBN took advantage of the IRS regs to permit Crouch, who's the head of this church, to ordain as ministers TBN's station managers, their department heads, so that they can give their employees of this basically business a housing exemption. And the IRS has helped them expand it even further. So the exemption is only supposed to be available to ministers of the gospel, which has been interpreted as people who perform sacerdotal functions, go ahead and read what those are, conduct religious worship, and then they're supposed to be part of a church that's organized and dedicated to carrying out the tenets and principles of faith. But the IRS, again, pretty much with TBN's help, have expanded this. So it includes now heads of Department of Education at religious schools, faculty, teachers, administrators, Sunday school teachers, choir teachers, and even in one case, basketball coaches at a religious school. Now, why is this so important to churches and religious organizations? It's because it makes them far more competitive in the marketplace. If they want to pay their employee $50,000, they pay their employee $50,000. If you're a secular organization and you want your employee to have $50,000, and we'll assume a 20% tax rate in this example, you have to pay them $62,500. It's $12,000 more you have to pay to stay competitive with the church. Employees obviously care because they don't pay taxes on it. You assume a 33% tax rate, you can see the difference there. But there's actually something worse about this law. If you're a pastor or a preacher or a minister of the gospel, you get to double dip. So because they can still deduct their mortgage payments from their income, even though that income is not taxable income in the first place, they're getting an even greater benefit. So you can see this is equal mortgage payments of $111. They actually are getting more than the church is paying them. Guess who's footing that bill? We're paying more because they're not paying anything, and then we're actually paying additional to give them this added benefit. So this raises serious problems for the constitutionality of the law. And the constitutional test that applies here is called the Lemon test. And it's basically got 3 steps. Any government action or government law has to have a secular purpose. It has to have a primary effect that doesn't advance religion or inhibit religion. And then it can't excessively entangle the government with religion or religious questions. So for the first step, remember what Peter Mack said about this law? He's trying to reward ministers of the gospel for fighting godlessness. It sounds very much like a religious purpose to me. Another representative noted that clergy members rely on the housing allowance. Without it, they face a devastating tax increase, meaning they pay their fair share, of $2.3 billion over the next 5 years, which gives you an idea of how much money we're losing to this. So clearly it's meant to reward religious leaders and only religious leaders. This is not a secular purpose. Prong 2, the primary effect can't be to advance religion. This law is very good at accomplishing its goals. It lets ministers pay, or lets religion pay its ministers less. So it clearly advances religion. And finally, the third prong is that it can't excessively entangle the government with religious questions. And it does that because you have the government, you have the IRS deciding who is a minister of the gospel, who is performing sacerdotal functions, It's basically deciding who is religious enough within a church organization to be eligible for this housing exemption. And interestingly, in our case, the federal government tried to argue that the co-presidents of an atheist legal organization were ministers of the gospel. The judge wrote that the government's argument is difficult to take seriously and dismissive. So, remember, if you fail any one of these, the law is unconstitutional. And in this case, it fails all three pretty handily. And that's what the court decided. We won this case. The district court in November decided that this law is unconstitutional, that the IRS cannot give this exemption to churches any longer. As with all big decisions, it was stayed pending an appeal, which means it doesn't go into effect until the appeal is done. So we're before the Seventh Circuit right now, working through this appeal. And I'm going to leave you with a quote that hangs, a quote that hangs on my wall at the office headquarters of FFRF. This is from James Madison. It's proper to take alarm at the first experiment on our liberties. We hold this prudent jealousy to be the first duty of citizens. America did not wait until usurped power had strengthened itself by exercise and entangled the question of precedence. So Madison wrote that in 1785. He was protesting a 3-penny tax that would go to support ministers of the gospel. So little violations of the First Amendment, in God we trust, one nation under God, are used to justify other violations. They have real-world consequences, and it's our duty as citizens to challenge these ideas wherever we encounter them. And when I say challenge, I don't necessarily mean challenging the court. The people in the best position to help us challenge these are those of you out there who are doubters, those of you who are non-religious or maybe afraid or unwilling to label yourself as an atheist or an agnostic. So the easiest way you can help us with these challenges is to come out of the closet. The longer I do this, the more convinced I am that we are going to win this fight with demographics. This is why the LGBT movement has been so successful, by normalizing what it is to be gay. We can do the same by normalizing non-belief. Everybody knows somebody, it turns out, who's gay, and they're just like you or me. Maybe a little more wonderful than that. And there's data to back this up. In March of 2013, a study came out showing that 28% of people have changed their minds about marriage equality. Once against it, now they support it. Of those 28%, 37% changed their minds just because they knew somebody who was gay. That's all it took, just knowing somebody. That's a huge number. Everybody knows somebody who's an atheist. They just don't know they're an atheist. It's much easier to hide being an atheist than it is to hide being gay. So you've got to come out of the closet to your friends. You've got to come out of the closet to your family. If you can do so safely without losing your job, you've got to do it work. It's time to stop hiding. And one fun way to do this is to join us on the FFRF website. We have a little out campaign that lets you design virtual billboards that you can put on your Facebook. Mine says, "Sorry, Jesus, you died for nothing. I take personal responsibility for my mistakes." appropriate for this time of year, I think. You can also find out more ways to join the fight by joining FFRF and convincing others to do the same. Membership's only $40 a year. You can give more, obviously, if you like. Perhaps you have some friends who are non-believers. Oops, sorry, folks. We're losing. I gotta get my quotes. So, perhaps you have some friends who are non-believers before we get to technical difficulties again. Sign them up for a gift membership at FFRF. Cheryl mentioned that we got 2,500 complaints last year. That's an accurate number. 2,500 state church complaints coming into FFRF. That is just scratching the surface. For every one that we hear about, there's easily 100 more that we don't hear about. And there are 60 million non-religious Americans in this country. We have 2,500 complaints, we have 4 attorneys. There are 60 million non-religious Americans. Do the math. We need your help. Every citizen needs to be helping on this. Jefferson's wall is a wall. It's not a fine line that's easily overstepped. But policing the wall requires vigilance. Government is not going to do it. They're the one who's going to be violating it. The courts aren't going to do that, sometimes even when we ask them to. It's up to us. It's up to you. So come out of the closet and join us on Jefferson's wall. Thank you.